Maisie, and it's how difficult is it to progress in the industry as a young director?
Well, I can only tell you obviously from my perspective because I'm just you guys in 1 year. So, I chose to go to uni to be able to do that because from where I was sitting, I was like, I want to be in London. I think all the opportunities are in London, which they're obviously not. But for me, that's where I wanted to be. That's where I felt like I could go furthest. So I decided to go to uni to do that. I think it's really great, but you do meet a lot of people who want to do the same thing as you. And in saying that, like, it's great that we can now showcase ourselves more online, like have our own websites, put our films up online. It is great, but that makes so much more competition everywhere. So you just have to stick it out, I guess. Like, it's going to be difficult, and I'm not like much further on than any of you. I'm still going to find it difficult, but as long as you know what you want to do at some point and stick to it, and have the right attitude towards it, I don't think, opportunities come, and if you take them, that's how you progress. So do that, keep an eye on things.
Yeah, it's that moment, like, where you're facing something that might be scary, but you've got to just kind of take the plunge. Guy, what's your have you got is your early trajectory in that way be any different to what Maisie's just described? I mean, you first starting out, I know it wasn't that long ago when you were.
Well, I mean, crikey, I mean, it was so different, such a different landscape. I mean, primarily it was working with film that I much preferred over working with tape.
Is that what you first sort of? Is that what triggered it for you, like kind of wanting to be a director?
I think as a kid,
yeah,
it was Super 8.
Yeah, Super 8, right? Yeah.
Which
are you familiar with
Super 8?
Yeah, right. It's starting to become a kind of getting a resurgence, right? Yeah.
So yeah, because in my parents' loft there were these. They looked like hair dryers, but effectively were Super 8 cameras. So we used to. I don't know if I've told you this. We used to have action men and a zip wire out of our bedroom window, and then we'd set fire to them. And we would just film, this is me and my mates, and we would just film them with our hair dryers. And then we'd project, because the thing about Super 8, you get these projectors, and you can project it really, so 3 minutes, which I think it's 3 minutes 10 seconds, that was the length of the cartridge. So we would just burn these, it wasn't, I've got to backtrack a little bit. The action men are quite expensive, so we'd go to the market and there'd be these like Hong Kong imports that would burn brilliantly. I don't know what kind of anyway, it just go up. So we would film this, and then we'd get the film back. You'd have to wait, I don't know, 2 weeks. Thing comes back in the post, and then we project it. And because there are certain Super 8 cameras, or there were at the time, that you could have sound. This was silent. That kind of. Even to this day, I think, because there was no possibility of sound, for me, in my films, I just knock as much dialogue out as I possibly can, and I get more out of a glance and a look than I do out of some kind of expositional bit of chat. But anyway, back to my burning action men. When we projected it as big as we could before it kind of lost sight of its own imagery, we would put on it the loudest soundtrack we could and just crank that up and just spend hours watching this kind of burn. So that I've taken about 3 minutes to explain. Yeah, that was my kind of.
3 minutes.
So it's a very different landscape. Very different, and I think.
But what's interesting there is that what's the similarities there though? What Guy's just described to what Maisie's situation is. Obviously, just the way he's making those films. Not okay. So Maisie hasn't been setting fire to soldiers from Hong Kong, but what else? What else was Guy talking about there? He's just the process. The support network that he's got. He's making it with friends, right? I mean, that's the critical bit at the early stage. It's that thing of like, you're in a network of filmmakers here now. Immediately, there's 25, 20, I don't know, lost count. People in this room. You're all filmmakers. And Jules said when he first came in, it's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, we sound a bit old, and I never thought I'd say that about you, but that makes me really old. But it wasn't. This sort of
You're
network.
right on that share. I wouldn't have done that if it was just me.
No,
it was something about that shared,
exactly,
collective.
Yeah.
That that meant it was a laugh.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's more important than whatever it looked like. It's probably out of focus and God knows what. But it was that, Christ, we have some fun here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going to art school for me was the same thing. It was the kind of, okay, so you go to university partly for the social, but you know there is an exchange, there's a conversation, there's a camaraderie, you're kind of throwing ideas off each other, and that happens now, right? I mean, it's no different. I mean, that is the process. It's collaboration. It's an exchange of that moment, that magic, that thing that you see on TV. It's like, wow, what is this thing? You know, that's the motivator for doing it. Go on.
I have a quick question for kind of Maisie in the way that you said about opportunities and uni. Do you think that uni has given you more opportunities than if you hadn't have gone? Maybe you could have gone like volunteering or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's a really, really good question because like everyone nowadays is like, do I go to uni or do I just train? I went to uni because it was something I always wanted to do, and I thought for me it was the cheapest way I could get to London. And I do really think that I will get opportunities from my university, but that's not to say that there aren't opportunities you can get otherwise. Like Alex, for example, hasn't taken the university route. He's like making his way up in like running jobs, and there are ways like he's moving to London in September as well, and being able to just afford to pay for like half a room, whatever. So if that's where you want to be, if you want to get somewhere, there are ways of doing it, and you can definitely get there without going to uni. But it's down to you as a person. Like, are you motivated enough to do it without like that added help? Because uni, it is an advantage, you know, for the 3 years you're there. Yeah, and do you want it? Can you find it?
Great. Let's have another question from the bowl. The bowl of wonderment. Bowls of.
Thanks, the guy. Have you always
It's
wanted?
not a hand grenade question. Go on then.
Have you always wanted to be a director since you got into this industry?
It's all I've ever done since. Yeah, I didn't get into it via running or. Yeah.
Do you think are you pleased that you've made that commitment, or do you sometimes worry that is the thing you do, like in the sense of, you know?
No, but I know that there's no, you know, I don't know how many of you have been on a film set, but it is totally boring. So for me, if I was doing something like, I couldn't cope with it. So it's only, you know, if you know, I have to write it, I just want to be involved. It's a bit like if it was a sort of cricket analogy, I'd have to be an all-rounder. I'd want to bat, bowl, God, you know. And the thought of being on a set without having to be occupied all the time, I would just yeah, I'd go kind of mad. We're getting a bit feisty here. Does that answer your question?
That's not my question, but yeah, I guess that answers it. Yeah.
Great. Let's have another question. Come on, dive in, everyone. Come on.
Hey, no worries, I'm mucking about.
How did you get into the industry, and would you recommend uni?
We've always sort of had the first part, haven't we?
I've actually accidentally picked up two.
All right, yeah.
Oh, superb.
That's right, go for the other one. Or is that both the questions?
Well, I'm getting about 8 now.
That's
Yeah.
Helen's dodgy notes, man.
No.
Excuse me?
Yeah. One job.
How did you work?
Give him a hand if you.
How did you work out how to make
Great.
such a strong transition from
intellectual to sad?
Basically,
Terrifying.
how do you,
This is a question about notes of blindness, maybe.
when you're editing, how do you convey certain emotions with your cutting and
Good
all
question.
that, I suppose?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do you convey well? I think personally, I think that's one of my skills, and I always bring a lot of emotion to the work that I do. I have no idea how I actually do it, but it's just how it turns out. If that makes sense,
Yeah.
like, just it's how.
That's good.
Sorry, that's-
magic of cinema.
Yeah.
Smoke and mirrors.
Sort of walk in and it's done. No. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's just how you. It's. Oh God.
Does the director say to you, right, I want this emotion here, I want this emotion here,
Yeah.
or do they give you that flexibility to
It's a
be
bit of
able
both.
to show where you think it should be?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. Like with Notes and Blindness, I had a first cut when the directors came into the editor after the shoot, and they were very happy with how, and very amazed at how some of these scenes had come together, because I had done them without, I had cut the scenes together without their input, and it was amazing for them to see how these scenes would come together without them being there, and they hadn't fathomed that something, it could be cut in a way that they hadn't thought of.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is it's like, it's how painters have their own style, they just sort of do it. I don't know, it's
Mhm.
like, it's very difficult to do, because you just like, I don't know, you just sort of feel your way through, you know, in combination with the music and sound effects and stuff. It just sort of just comes out of me onto the timeline, and I like to keep it very fluid and not think about it too much, because if you start thinking about it too much, and that's when it starts to become a bit disjointed and a bit uninteresting. I think and that determines when you cut and what shots you use and all that sort of business. That's where that it's not. A lot of people sort of read up about editing and stuff, and I think it's good to learn techniques and how you should do things, but I think it's more important just to do it.
Great.
Because there obviously are ways of cutting scenes and shots together and stuff like that, but it's useless unless you give it a go.
You're dealing with
It's an expression, yeah, it's an
that's right,
artistic form, so you have to just see how it goes and then see how it comes out. I don't know, sorry, that's
That's a really great question, a great answer. What's your relationship with editors? Like, how would you describe that process? That, you know, building on from the back of that kind of question in terms of how an editor puts it together. How do you work with editors that then work on your footage? What's the relationship there? And is there a preference or?
For me, like Jules, I give them a lot of space to start with, and you know, it is collaboration, and it's about allowing them to have their voice. And so I too, it comes back to this boredom thing, because I'll just be sitting there. I can't operate, because that's what the editor. So I have to sort of go into town, or do you know what I mean? But I quite like that. So I'll go in the morning and we'll have a chat and a coffee, and then there are times when I can really. So when I was doing the Goo, for example, there were times I could really sense that Adam, who, funnily enough, is a great editor, works with people like Lynn Ramsey. He didn't go to university. He took the other way, just straight in at 18, and you know, worked in cutting rooms, God knows what. But I can just sense there are times when he wants me out of that room, and there might be a fiddly scene. I don't know how you are, Jules. You just want to be you and the material, and you don't want some idiot sitting on the chair, stirring his coffee, you know, whatever. So I will just go, and I'll actually say, "How long do you want me away for?" And if he says all day, I will then come back at 6 o'clock.
It's an interesting point actually, because on the short form things, you know what Julian does, and potentially these guys do at either side of the longer form stuff. You know the relationship and the dynamic is maybe slightly different, because actually what you've often got, and it's probably the bit that you don't really like as much, is that you've got a producer or a director who has to be in the room every day, and you're having this battle because you've got you've got to do a 30-second or a 60 or a 90 or a 5-minute, and it's like it's turnover, and you've got to get it out the door, and there's this like, there is no time for that person to leave, and all you want is headspace. Yeah. But a lot of the time you can't have it. Yeah. And that's really difficult. Yeah. You have to be a bit of a robot when it comes to. It's hard. It's a really hard process to go through, and hard for the director as well, because like you say, you're not the hands, and you've got this person here because you want them there, but it's like, oh, just move it. Just go over to the left a bit, and you're like, no, but I'm trying to. You're down the line a bit, and you know, it's very, very difficult. Maisie, what's your experience?
Yeah, it's like, I completely agree. I think, like I said earlier, you wouldn't be working with these people if you didn't trust them and what they were going to do. They were going to like do your film justice. Like with Walk of Shame, for example. Okay, Jamie edited that, and we did have a really tight deadline, and we were sitting together every single day, like every minute, doing it together. But I do like being able to come in to a rough cut as well. I can be quite a controlling person, I'm very aware of that. So I do think it's really useful for my editors to just have time to sit and look at the material for themselves. And when another person comes to this footage that they perhaps haven't seen before and can put their own spin on it, that's a great thing, because that is the collaboration. Then if you come to it and say, well, actually, I'd like to tweak this and this, you're getting more of a well-rounded viewpoint of the film. And you're knowing that everything that you're trying to portray, or that you've been trying to portray in the writing and the shooting of the film, is coming across, because someone's already put it together for you and said, look, it makes sense. So I think it's so useful to have that distance.
Right, yes, go on.
Do you find it's like, this is a question for like kind of all three, but is it easier if you kind of have the editor that you work with on a few different films, and can you like say, I'll request an editor that you've worked with before? Is it easier because they know what wavelength you're on? So like a producer and a presenter on a live show have that relationship. Is that like really important, or does it depend on the film?
It's for everybody, then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky for me because I'm a staff editor, but my directors, if there's a big project that comes in, they'll only want me to work on it rather than a freelancer. Like, we get freelance editors in to do all sorts of stuff, but because once you get that first film out of the way with the director, and if you do a good job, then you know how they work really, so it's easier to then go on to the next thing, because you know that the director's not going to like the way that is. You bypass any.
You've got shorthand.
Yeah, yeah. You bypass any second guessing, I guess. So you just you do it and it's quicker. I guess in that sense, it's yeah.
I think it's exactly that shorthand that, and I think that's why teams do stick together, because you don't have to. It's not wasting time, but you don't have to spend that time getting to know people, calibrating that relationship. So I think that once you've had some success with a person, then yeah, my inclination would be to stick with them.
It's a good moment when you're slightly younger to kind of try different scenarios, and it's hard because actually some of the things you make, you maybe feel that they weren't that successful, and that's a hard thing in itself to kind of face, and maybe that sometimes with people that you feel like, yeah, I can really make a film with that person, and then you make it and you go, oh my god, and that didn't pan out in the way that I wanted it to, and the opposite can happen as well. You can be kind of put together with people and you just think, I just can't see this happening, but actually they bring out stuff in you that you just had no idea was possible. But that's the wonderful thing about film as well, is that you go on, the process that you go through sometimes is, well, I would say my experience, a lot of the time maybe as interesting, and sometimes in some situations more interesting than the film itself. The process of filmmaking, the kind of the relationships you go through, the kind of journey you take with people is fascinating. It's part of film. That's why film and cinema is what it is. It's the kind of the exchange that happens whilst you're making it as well. Maisie, what's your take?
No, I completely agree. I think that's really, really true. But also from a student perspective, like Jamie said, this is the time to experiment and work with different people. I've definitely benefited from working with different editors on films, because you get to see other people's perspectives and how, not only how they work, but like how they view the way you work and your material, what you're creating. But at the same time, I've also worked with people who perhaps weren't that interested or didn't work the way I work. And I do think it takes a specific type of person to be a good editor, because anyone can cut footage together, but not everyone has the like emotion running through it. Like Jules was saying, being able to cut things to what feels right. So I do think that at this point it is really useful to be able to work with certain people and find out who you work with best and how you work with people best, and it will like inform your later career and your like networking as well. Just keep hold of the ones that you like for later.